Welcome to the JT and Looney Podcast.
You're looking live.
Yeah, we don't have to say what time it is because no one knows what time a podcast is. But we're streaming. We're streaming live on X, and you can retweet it. And we are streaming live on YouTube, and then you'll cut this up in your post-production lab and throw it up on our podcast platform, which will be great.
Love it. It's a great moving our mouths and opining about what's going on in the world of sports and entertainment and whatever else we're paying attention to and having fun doing it.
I like what you said there, moving our mouths. It's kind of like getting your body moving in the morning. Went for the dog walk, the big walk, got the body moving.
Oh, that's great.
Second cup of coffee, feeling good. I got bumped today for AAA baseball. I know you love that topic. When I want to be on the radio so bad, and a AAA baseball team that's playing in Round Rock or Shreveport or Boise bumps me from the radio. So I thought I'd turn on the podcast machine and we'd get going.
It is a lot of fun listening to sports on the radio. I don't know how often people listen to AAA on the radio. I know old grandmothers did when they listened to the Elmira Pioneers back in the day growing up. Look at that. I got the word Elmira in within the first 2 minutes of the show. A little duck's going to come down and Groucho's going to give away a prize. But I don't know how often, and it's a good thing we're not saying this on terrestrial radio, but I don't know how often anymore that people listen to sports on the radio, unless, of course, you get sent out to the store to get something and you want to catch up on the game. That's really the only time I'm listening to the Dodgers that I love is when I got to run out and make a beer run or a wine run or a ribeye run.
Yeah, I was on satellite radio last night. I'll be on satellite radio tonight. And the only thing that messes with my head on that is if you don't have a subscription and you're not listening to Sirius XM, and that's the number one by far subscription radio site of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a big plus. But if you're not, then you can't hear me on the radio. And I always love the fact that people can hear me on the AM radio.
Oh,
I can promise you this. I don't claim to know a lot about history, and I can go back to Marconi when he invented the radio. But I will tell you that we're getting to a point where no one will be listening on AM radio at some point in time. I'm on AM radio in Vegas, which I love it. But at some point, we both agree that no one, as in no human beings, even in movies, will do parts with an AM radio from back in the day. It's over.
There's a lot of industries that people believed that were a slam dunk as far as investment or as far as a convenience that would never go away, like phone booths and fax machines. And so eventually nothing lasts forever. And this too shall pass is something to always remember in life when you're going through good times or bad. And same thing with technology. This too shall pass. The same stuff doesn't stay around forever.
Well, look, just in the last 10 years before I'd go to work, I would get in my car and I would grab the newspaper at the bottom of my driveway. And I would take the newspaper and turn on the radio in my car and drive to work. And in the last 10 years, I have my phone synced to my car, my phone, and whatever I'm listening to. I don't have the paper delivered to the house anymore, which is breaking news because I did that forever. And I get all my news on my tablet or my phone. And as you said, times do change. And there's many things like the camera that I went to college at Geneseo State right outside Rochester, New York, where they had a company called Kodak. And everybody at one point in our lives had a camera, not a camera phone, a camera. And when was the last time, other than a journalist or someone that you saw at a press rally, had a camera or at a wedding shooting photography?
I make a big fuss if I see someone when I'm out and about and they have a real camera. I always announce it, a real camera. And yeah, great analogy there. And Kodak was to cameras what Heinz was to ketchup. Yeah, there's some other off brands, but almost everyone had a Kodak camera. And I have a friend who writes for the Wall Street Journal as a career counselor, Deb Cohen, and known her forever. And her job for like 20 or 25 years was getting people new jobs who formerly worked at Kodak in Rochester. And I grew up in upstate New York. You were in a place that was always hustling and bustling. Downstate New York, Long Island, when it came to our economy and our incredible American economy. And even when we're complaining about it, it's the envy of the world. But in upstate New York, when I was growing up, all the factories were closing. I lived in the Rust Belt. And so some people who were like career counselors had full-time jobs for decades, helping people reinvent their lives.
Speaking of hustling and bustling, there's a lot of people now making names in Vegas for having these social media sites that talk about budgets of casinos, restaurants closing, shows starting. And there's a couple of people that are getting really famous for this, and they do a pretty good job. And today it came across my timeline that the Flamingo Hotel, which Bugsy, your favorite movie, Bugsy opened as the first casino ever, is charging $60 for early check-in. And it went viral, just like that bottle of water, that Fiji bottle of water that sold for, $30 in the hotel, went viral. So now the scoundrels here in Vegas, where I live, some of these casino operators, these greedy individuals, and some of them are public companies. Most of them are. There are a few privates left. Can you imagine your room sitting empty at 3:30 in the afternoon, but you could pay $60 to check in early? What a money grab, just like resorts fees and the internet and all this other bullshit that they're trying to hit us for. And since when did it happen? Because it didn't happen to me on my last trip to Chicago, but it happened before. That check-in is 4 p.m. now. When the hell did that crap happen?
Where crazy.
You had to check out at 11 in the morning, and check-in was 4 p.m. Is this a post-COVID thing?
I don't know if it's a post-COVID thing, but it doesn't. You and I have talked about this. We were just texting about this when it comes to airline travel. We like to get on the plane, get where we're going, get off the plane, and get where we want to go. And there's people in your way, and people don't know how to get off a plane. And then if you don't take carry-on, then there's to get in the luggage, and it just all takes so long. And that part of travel drives me crazy. And another thing is, if you get to where you want to be and you want to relax, run down to the beach or have lunch in this new exotic location. You're finally on vacation, and then they want. Sometimes you have to leave your bags. Oh, we'll take care of your bags, but come back at 4:00. Drives me crazy.
Well, look, if they're super busy and the hotel's at 100% occupancy or 98, and they got to clean the rooms, and we always care about the people who clear the rooms are busting their ass. I mean, no one works harder in Vegas than the people that are trying to get your rooms ready. But that's a big deal. There's a lot I want to get to in this episode. I want to begin with
social commentary about what you just said, which is so important, about the people who clean the rooms in Vegas or in Winnemucca, Nevada, or anywhere in the United States of America, this great country. And that is, and I was just watching Ronald Reagan and George Bush, his vice president, when they were both running for president, debating and talking about immigration and talking about all the wonderful people who come to this country to start a new life. And they're not rapists, or they're not let out of insane asylums. Many times they're 15, 16, 17-year-old boys who don't want to live with their mother and their sister. They want to come and live with their father, who's here working somewhere. And so I will never punch down, and I will never throw at pilgrims who sometimes walk thousands of miles. Could you imagine? To this country is so amazing. People want to walk here. People want to come here and study at Harvard from other countries, and then they want to stay and be doctors and lawyers and do great things, but they want to stay here and do it. So I just want to say, yes, the immigration debate needs to be had. You need to have a responsible immigration, but I love my friends and neighbors who move to this country from faraway places and have to learn another language, and many times start out cleaning hotel rooms so their children can grow up and be doctors and lawyers just like our children.
Yes, I love peaceful immigrants that come here legally.
Wonderful.
And that's for sure.
And by the way, even the ones who don't come here legally many times don't have the means. They can't send a fax to the embassy. They don't even know what that means. They just want to come here. And so I will never spend what you could pay me millions and millions of dollars tomorrow to do an anti-immigration show. I won't do it.
No, I know you won't. And you're very passionate about that. Sports topics, small market NBA teams. You and I have been at the forefront of this topic forever, because the Knicks never make it to the finals anymore and never get there. So that's out. But we've had recently Boston
Mm-hmm.
And, you get the Warriors. That's a big market team, the gateway to the Pacific Rim, San Francisco, the East Bay when they were in Oakland. Big market overall. And Dallas with Luka, big market, was in the finals. But we got a really big problem coming up here between Indiana and Oklahoma City. I don't think anybody's going to watch from Portland down to San Diego. I don't think they're going to watch from Maine all the way down to Miami. I think that the flyovers in the Midwest they're going to tune in for this, and anywhere where you can drive to Oklahoma City and Indiana, which both have good fan bases. But, these leagues and these commissioners chase ratings, and we're going to have two teams that don't rate very well. Are you going to watch?
Well, I will watch because I love the unexpected, and I love the NBA. Then it goes all. I remember going all the way back to when I was a kid and drinking beer when I wasn't supposed to, and watching NBA finals at my house when mom was out doing something, having my friends over. And so I love the NBA, and I'm deep rooted in fandom of the NBA, but we are both what they call throwout statistics in statistics class. And there's just not enough bodies to give it much ratings. But people always complain that it's the same teams, and the Lakers this century were in 7 out of the first 10 NBA finals. And so people complain about that. And then, the superstars ended up moving to LA with Powell. And then it was LeBron James. And people get upset about all that. But it actually is what we want. You don't ask the people what they want. You tell the people what they want. And the NBA has been pretty good at that. And the superstars have been pretty good at figuring out they can make bigger bucks in the bigger markets. But it's not good for the brand when it's smaller markets, because you need more bodies to make more money and to keep a brand at a higher visibility.
Well, one thing that I got right on this is I said that the playoffs would clean up a couple of the warts and scars of the NBA. Mm-hmm. And that would be load management. You don't see guys going, take me out of the game. We have a game tomorrow. I don't want to play. It's my night off. They hustle harder. They play harder defense. They're more physical. It's more of a violent game, more physical game. And we're not seeing the stupidity of the bad threes. We're still seeing a lot of threes and a lot of missed threes. Whenever you watch an NBA game and you have access to your phone or the computer, just look at the box score and go to the top where it's three-pointer, and then go to the bottom, and they'll have the percentage, and it's usually 7 for 42 every game. We haven't gotten rid of that completely, but I like the quality of play of Oklahoma City. They're a really good young team. They've sucked for a long time, so they accumulated a lot of picks. So they eventually were going to get it right, like the Astros, when the Astros sucked forever, and the Tampa Bay Rays sucked forever, and they tanked, and they got all these picks, and eventually they got a few good players. Oklahoma City has done it the right way. They play great defense. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have good players out on the perimeter. They defend well. So I have them winning in 5, because 6 to me is an easy way out. Someone's going to win the series. If you say 7, that means you're guessing. 6 is a pretty strong opinion. If you have a real strong opinion, you'll say what I say. I got OKC in 5, but man, Indiana took out my Knicks, and they're a gritty, gutty team.
Well, they are, and it's GE, as people like to say already. People need to learn his name throughout the country before you start calling him by his
SGA.
SGA. Sorry,
that's a good one.
But I think that one of the great things about what you're saying is that people get to learn about these new superstars that everyone's talking about. Picking in 5 is always a little bit more ballsy, because 6 is always usually the sweet number where it ends up anyway. And I love how you pointed out guys not playing. How's Kawhi Leonard doing? Kawhi Leonard is the stink in the room when it comes to guys just not playing anymore and signing big contracts and not playing because of the fires. His house wasn't on fire. His house was fine, but he took a mental day off because of the fires in LA, when other coaches and players and hardworking people's homes were burning down. His wasn't, but he took the day off because it was bothering him so much. So the load management has been driving a lot of people crazy, because that hurts the NBA. That hurts when people I understand it's a long season in the NBA, but get out there and play, and it's going to be an entertaining finals, because here's why you watch. It's unscripted drama. It's why we like reality television. I've always said that. And people say, well, I don't like reality television. Yes, you do if you like sports, because that kind of reality, that those games were going on long before there were cameras being set down. And it's the greatest reality TV there is. And that's why we love sports. And I also want to mention, because you unpacked so much there, that, yeah, there's a lot of threes in the NBA, and there's no more fax machines, and there's no more cell phone. I mean, and there's no more pay phones, and there's no more newspapers. But times change, and just enjoy them. And count your blessings, because if that's the worst of our problems right now is that we've got small market teams in the NBA Finals and people are jacking up too many threes, then we've got good problems.
ESPN did a really good feature on 6 separations of Paul George, how Paul George got traded from Indiana for a boatload of equity, and that built the Pacers and a guy named Tyrese Halliburton. And Paul George, let's not forget, played for OKC, and his movement out of OKC brought in SGA. So Paul George is the guy who got all the money. He got all the money, and he called himself Playoff P. And as Barkley said, he doesn't win in the playoffs. His name should not be Playoff P. But Paul George's decisions and the ability to trade him from 2 franchises, both franchises caught the crest of the wave and built NBA final teams.
And that's great that they did. That's great that they did. You know why? Because how often does it happen where that doesn't happen? The crappy franchise that ends up with the superstar trades him away and does nothing with it. You know, like Orlando, when they traded Shaq away, we have 100 examples of bad franchises trading good players away to rebuild, and they get a bunch of great stuff and great picks. But because there's such a bad franchise historically, they still don't know what to do with it. Congratulations on those 2 franchises for knowing what to do with the riches that they got.
2 shows are now no longer with us, but one's moving to a different platform. Around the Horn, which gave points away for free or took away points for no reason, is gone. And our national nightmare now is everybody who's having PTSD from that show being gone. And everybody gave a group hug. We have friends like Sedano, George Sedano, others who have been on the show.
And you should have.
The world to them.
They should have had you on there the last 20 years. So we could.
Yeah, I'm happy I was not on that show. I don't like to go on shows where you get points for nothing and you get points for something. That's not for me. That's not for me. You know me. I don't want to go on a show and sit in a cage and say something great and have 2 points taken away and say something stupid and get points. No, that's not me.
You would have been great. You would have been great.
I would have been great at it, but I wouldn't. It wouldn't have been for me. But the NBA on TNT is moving to ESPN, and it's no longer going to be the NBA on TNT. And Bill Simmons put out he has a big podcast, one that we feel like ours could be just as good if people watched it at Bill Simmons's rate. And he thinks ESPN, as he said, is going to screw it up because of their clock. And I thought it was a fascinating piece of content on their clock. It's not, the NBA on TNT is moving to ESPN. They're keeping the same studio in Atlanta, same exact production crew, same exact talent, but Simmons pointed out that their clock is different. If you watch ESPN, ABC, and I don't know if you noticed this, Tom, because I didn't, they have tiny, tiny halftimes that are like a minute 30, and their pregame shows are really, really short. Well, that's exactly not what NBA on TNT did. They do long form, so they don't have a clock. So if Barkley's going off, they'll let him go 22 minutes.
Oh, how often has a game ended on TNT? And then you watch some of the post-game show, and then you go get a beer, you go have something to eat, you're doing, and then an hour later you come out and they're still talking.
It's a great point. You nailed it, because that's what was great. Turner Sports is much smaller than ESPN. Right. ESPN is the model, the gold standard for size and distribution. So they sell spots. And if you're selling more spots than Turner is, and you got to get to those spots, you got to cut off Charles Barkley, or you got to cut off Ernie in the middle of a sentence here, because you got to get to the commercial break. That could take away the mojo, eventually piss off Barkley and Shaq and those TNT, guys who don't need the money.
And they didn't have to worry after a game, because they're not going to rush back to an Alfred Hitchcock movie or whatever else was going to be on TNT. They could just let the show go. It was almost like a podcast.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was amazed at how many times that they would come into a segment on the post-game show and they'd show the highlights again, and Barkley would say, "Oh no, we don't want to see these again. There's no need to see these. And they'd have to do that 10-minute package of the highlights and the post game and get to those guys again. But I wish them well. I had a great 10-year run with Charles up in Tahoe.
Yeah.
Which I really miss. It's probably the biggest event that I miss, but it doesn't matter anymore. When I was in Tahoe for that event for that many years and built this unbelievable friendship with Barkley doing the radio show there, I was the only radio show in the hotel casino. That doesn't exist anymore. There are no more radio shows. They do a little bit of a radio row on the driving range, but I was there at the epitome of it and got to know Charles well. I never thought that Barkley would go on to win all those Emmy Awards. I never thought that he'd end up being the #1 studio analyst, without a doubt, for well over a decade on a show that was on Turner Sports, TNT, that now moves to ESPN. Do you think it'll work on its new platform?
Well, they don't necessarily. Maybe they'll, as Grandpa Looney would say, maybe they'll monkey with the clock. The clock isn't a constitutional amendment. So hopefully they'll sit down in those corner offices where all the smartest people work and have the discussion that we're having. Great story about Barkley in Tahoe. I was holding down the fort in Los Angeles many times when you were out there in Tahoe with producers that weren't always sober. So you had to produce the show yourself. Because some good stories about that. So, and you're always in a hurry. We both are, and the impatience is always what kind of drove the show. And you were always incredible respect for guests. You didn't make them wait 2 seconds on hold, reminding them you're the host. And so you're talking to Barkley, and they're running up against a commercial, and you said, so you're going to let him go because you just figured he wanted to go. He said, I don't have to go anywhere, and he would stay for several segments, not in a hurry to take off the headset. And that was always really cool. Do you remember that when you would, because you were always in a hurry and say, okay, we'll let you go. One last question. He'd say, one last question. I don't have to go anywhere. And he would stay. That was cool.
It's interesting you said that. I mentioned this last night because we played some sound bites of TNT and the NBA going away. And I go back with Charles so far that I go back with him when he was friends with Michael Jordan. Now, remember, he's not friends with Michael Jordan anymore, and that thing hasn't been patched up, and Jordan's going to NBC. So he's going to NBC, and everyone's fascinated because they don't know what Jordan's role is going to be. Right. He's not going to be in the studio every Saturday and Friday night. Okay. The guy's worth billions. He's got yachts that are in Croatia and Paris. He's not going on every night. But Barkley,
you're not worth billions and you don't have yachts, but you wouldn't be happy working on Friday and Saturday night either, because I know what you like to do on Fridays.
Jordan's not going to work a lot, but when he does, I'd like to see Jordan work the NBA Finals, the All-Star game, right? The big events. I think Jordan will be there because he signed to do a job. But I remember when Barkley and Jordan were talking, and when we were in Tahoe, we were wrapping up the show, and Charles bought the whole lounge. And the lounge probably had, I'd say, anywhere between 200 and 300 people.
Famous for this.
A pretty big crowd. And Barkley, during a commercial, would buy everybody a shot and a beer. And I'd be like, whoa. So the waitress would come by, the server. We called them waitresses back then. Now we call them servers, which I think is a worse. Now I wouldn't want to be called the server, but the waitress would come by, and Charles would say, and he'd have cash like this, if you're watching, bankroll, and he'd go, buy everyone a beer and a shot. And it wasn't like you could go to Nancy and she'd go, well, can I have a Blue Moon? No, we're going to buy you a beer and a shot. It's going to be really quickly here. And then when the show would end, he would say to me as I was wrapping up, he'd go, point to the high limit room. And I would go meet him there after the show. I'd go up to my room. I'd brush my teeth because when you're on the radio for 3 hours, you got to go up the room, freshen up. And I would go down there and I'd walk into the high limit room. And there was 1 year, swear on my kids, that at one blackjack table, it was Michael Jordan, Oscar De La Hoya, Emmett Smith. I think it was Jerry Rice. And you looked around the room, and I'm there in the room, and I'm looking outside, and I see walking by Donald Trump. Yes, that one. Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh was there. And I said, this is the epitome of sports. And I remember Barkley playing and laughing and talking to Charles. Can you believe they haven't been able to patch up that friendship? Because Barkley criticized Jordan for whatever reason, and Jordan was so thin-skinned that he got rid of his friend. And I know there's a little bit more to that, but that's one of the great friendships that no one could patch up, which is shocking to me.
Well, it's shocking to us because we collect friends. We don't get rid of them and we don't dump them. And, our friends can make fun of us as much as we want because we can laugh at ourselves because whatever our friends are making fun of, we know is a flaw we have anyway. And it's always a little bit disappointing when you find out that people you really admire don't have a sense of humor about themselves. My mother really pounded that into us boys was, the best humor is always in the mirror, and you've always got to be able to laugh at yourself. And that's disappointing. And we've also, what's interesting about Michael Jordan, he's always been good at trying to avoid, any controversies whatsoever. They came to him anyway, so he had trouble staying out of trouble, even though he had minimal public exposure in a lot of ways, at least with social political stuff or commentary roles. Whenever he had to give a speech, he wasn't that likable, like this Hall of Fame speech, etc. So he was good at Kobe's funeral. Still a lot about him. So you wonder is he going to say unlikable things, and some of that luster going to be lost? Because sometimes the better you get to know some famous people, the less you like them.
And there is a Tiger Woods caveat to Jordan Barkley. There is a Tiger Woods caveat. I'll leave that here. Okay. There is a Tiger Woods Vegas caveat there. I would have lost my bleeping mind if I went to Dodger Stadium, got a credential or a ticket, and watched what the Dodgers did to my Yankees on Friday and Saturday. My son went Friday, quick story, because he might be in the chat here. My son went Friday, and he got seats with his friend, a buddy of mine they grew up playing Little League with, in Sherman Oaks. And they were sitting right at the foul pole, about a level up. Really cool seats. There's like a club, and above it, there's like open seating. Mm-hmm. And he happened to have his phone out when the game started, and Judge homered. And he got the Judge home run beautifully, tracked the ball. Judge hit it to center field. And then the next inning, Ohtani led off with a home run. And my son said, "Dad, I have never heard a sound like that." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "The sound of Ohtani hitting the baseball, the crack, the sound." He never, I go, "Well, you saw Judge hit a home run in the first inning. It had to be similar." He said, No. Oh, no. Well, he was sitting, you could hear the sound of Ohtani. It was like a cannon went off. And there was an 18-2 game mixed in there. That series mattered a lot. People say, well, no, it's interleague. It's before the All-Star break. No, the Yankees had a lot to prove after blowing the World Series, dropping the fly ball, the famous fifth inning of hell, as they call it. Yeah. And the Dodgers owned their ass. The Yankees won on the Sunday, the getaway day. But what was the vibe like in Los Angeles as you could ride your bike to the stadium and to see the crowds that showed up for Dodgers Yankees?
Oh, it was incredible. And also, as you mentioned too, it's like the deflated Yankees and their fans. When you want to prove that it might have been an anomaly last year, or get out there and prove something against the Dodgers, and you lose 18-2. It makes it look like last year wasn't, the World Series wasn't an accident, and the team that won should have won, which is probably the case. But it was so much fun watching those two teams all weekend. I barely missed a pitch. I mean, that's how exciting it was. And I have a short attention. I don't usually, not until this all-star lineup with the Dodgers came along, have I started watching games in the first inning, because attention span issues. I had ADHD before it had initials. So watching this Dodger team, and the organization, just like we talked about with the Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder being able to do something with the Paul George picks. A lot of times you see all those mega trades throughout history and nothing happens with the shitty team because they're a shitty organization. But the Dodgers, somebody will get hurt like Chris Taylor, and they'll bring up Ha-Seong Kim, somebody you never heard of. And all of a sudden he's the best player on the team right now. He's betting 500 at home. And it looks about 11 years old, and they get rid of Taylor. So the Dodgers do that once a year. They will bring up Max Muncy, was 10 years ago. They'll bring up a guy you never heard of, and from their farm teams, and from Albuquerque, and he's the best. All of a sudden, he'll be the best player on the team. So that's what's also great about the Dodger organization over the years is the guys. not the superstars, but the guys that come up and are superstars that you never heard of. They're supposed to be, fill-ins, and all of a sudden they're Lou Gehrig.
You know how comedians go to these little tiny basement comedy shops to work on their material, their bits before they go to the arenas and the shows?
Yeah.
So I've been working on a bit. I've been working on a radio bit with the Dodgers for a while now. I've just been trying it out on different platforms, different shows. And here's the bit. The bit is that the Dodgers have been around longer than the Yankees, believe it or not. If you Wikipedia and Google the birthday of the Dodgers and the Yankees have been around from the 1800s. Okay. The Yankees, early 1900s. You look at these teams. And the Dodger fans don't want to talk about the past at all. It's a phenomenon. They don't want to talk about the past. They just want to talk about now. And it's a very much, you suck, we're great, we just won the World Series. And I'm like, well, no, there's something called the past in the history of sports, and we have to look at it. So the Yankees have 27 rings. The Dodgers have 8. The Dodgers have been good your whole life. They've had guys like Don Drysdale, Pee Wee Reese, Roy Campanella, Sandy Koufax, Jackie Robinson. The Dodgers broke
somebody else's life, but okay, yes.
Yeah, but that's a big part of history of baseball. Matter of fact, we can both sit here today, June 3rd of 2025, and say the most important history in the history of baseball is either Babe Ruth or Jackie Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
No debate.
That's also what's great about a Yankees-Dodgers regular season series.
Yeah.
They're the two greatest, most historical teams in baseball.
Correct. So the Dodger fans like to remind you that, well, the Yankees got all their rings when black players weren't allowed to play. And it's fair. They got a number of rings early. But the Dodgers were competing in those World Series when black players weren't allowed to play. You can't explain that to a Dodger fan. They don't get it. The Dodgers think the record starts when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier.
Right.
And when he did, he couldn't beat the Yankees. And then they won in 1955. It's probably the Dodgers' most famous World Series ever was Jackie Robinson's World Series over the Yankees. And that started that. And then from 1965 until today, the Dodgers have won 5 World Series. I was born in 1965. They've won 5. Derek Jeter won 5. Okay? Derek Jeter won 5 in that span of the 90s into the early 2000s. So that kind of shuts up the Dodger fans. But here's the new bit I've been working on at the Chuckle Hut. Bucky Dent's got 2 rings. Ohtani's got 1. Okay. Bucky Dent's got 2, and Ohtani has 1.
My famous Mark Rippon theory. Go ahead.
And then, the Dodger fans will say Ohtani's got 1 and Judge has none. You're right. I can't argue that. I can't argue that. So the issue that I need to happen, A-Rod won 1 ring. One of the greatest players of all time, tainted because of performance-enhancing drugs. He won 1 ring. Now he's a world champion for the rest of his life. I don't need Judge to win 6 or 4. Jeter won 5. Yogi Berra won 10. I need Judge to win 1. And then it quiets all the Dodger fans that says Judge can't win and Ohtani's won. And the Dodgers have the upper hand right now, Tom. They're the better team, the bigger payroll, and the Yankees are going to have to go through the Dodgers. I don't think they can go through the Dodgers now. So I'm hoping that the Padres or the Mets, the Phillies, a National League team knocks off the Dodgers before they get to the World Series.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, let's start with the Dodgers not caring about history. I think coming up, I think they have Sandy Koufax bobblehead night. It's like the 3 people who are alive who saw Sandy Koufax player going to get in line ahead of time at the stadium and get that bobblehead. But so sometimes they overdo the history at Dodger Stadium. But nevertheless, that's I know what you mean when it comes to this particular argument. They ignore the history. And a lot of times people ignore history because they don't know it. They do that in all areas of life, but they don't know it. This is the most volatile time in the history of American politics. No, it's not. It's the most volatile time in your life in American politics, maybe, but not in the history of American politics. So people are always equate all time with their time on the planet. So that's why probably people leave out the history of the Dodgers because they don't know it. But it's and a lot of times when you talk about the greatest of all time, we do have an overemphasis on rings because some of the greatest players of all time end up going to the crappiest teams because the crappiest teams get the draft pick. So where you end up really is important when you're some of the greatest of all players of all time. And there's a lot of greatest players of all time that didn't get rings because they couldn't do it on their own. And Judge can't do it on his own.
Yes, you're right about that. And if you're a Dodger fan, and we have Dodger fans listening and viewing us, the Dodgers scare me now because they have a window. When the Yankees won 4 out of 5, okay, that's a dynasty. Remember my rule of dynasty? You got to have 3.
Dynasty. Yep.
Got to have 3. 3 in a row is the perfect dynasty. 3 out of 4 is allowed. 3 out of 5, ooh, you're stretching it, Warriors. Yeah, that's kind of, I don't know. But the Dodgers, to me, have the team now that can build the dynasty quickly with Ohtani. They could quickly with Mookie and Ohtani. They won last year.
Mookie, Freeman. Yeah.
Freeman's unbelievable. Yankees can't get Freeman out. They could put together a dynasty. They can go from 8 to 11, 8 to 12 before the Yankees get one. I think the Yankees will get one. They're going to get a chip here with Judge. They're going to win one with Judge. Okay, Judge isn't going to play 10 years for the Yankees and not get a ring. There's too much payroll. There's too many good options for the Yankees to do it. But I give the Dodgers a lot of credit for what they've done. And here's my other last shot at the Dodger fans, because this is something you could use in your local Korean barbecues or tailors if someone brings this up. And no one's talking about this other than me. Nobody. If Ohtani left the Dodgers tomorrow, this is his last season, all those Ohtani fans who are now Dodger fans, none of them would be Dodger fans. Every single one of those effing fans would leave the Dodgers and immediately go to Ohtani's new team. Now, if Mookie Betts left the Dodgers and went somewhere else, all those Mookie Betts fans would stay Dodger fans. Ohtani's like Taylor Swift. He really is. That's a comparison. Taylor Swift picked the Chiefs. If she was dating a wide receiver for the Titans, all of her fans, not some of them, all would go to the Titans. So Ohtani, Dodger fans got the Taylor Swift effect on a franchise and a fan base that is global to begin with. That's what rubs me the wrong way, are these new Dodger fans who are Ohtani fans, and they were Angel fans 2 years ago.
That's a great argument because it's a great sweeping sports talk radio extremist argument. So you can't prove you wrong. It's not going to happen. So I can never prove you wrong on that. It's perfect. But what happens is you get a whole new generation of ethnic fans, of Japanese fans in Los Angeles, and kids are going to have these great memories of going to Dodger games, just like Mexican kids. Mexican Americans would not go to Dodger Stadium because how they acquired that stadium and wrecked down a Mexican-American neighborhood to build a stadium. So it was just nobody went. Nobody of Mexican-American or Mexican descent went to Dodger games until Fernando Valenzuela came along. Then now they've got a whole new generation of what is the majority of the citizens in Los Angeles, Mexicans. So and then they didn't, when Fernando went to other teams, they didn't leave with Fernando or get a Fernando jersey. And same thing with Ohtani. He's going to have a whole new generation of Japanese fans who aren't going to go anywhere. So I don't think you're right about that.
I don't think Ohtani's going to leave the Dodgers.
Right, and that's not going to happen. Right, so that's a great argument.
That's neither here nor there. All right, so I finished the 100-foot wave. Garrett McNamara is the big surfer guy. I loved it. Right. It was peaceful. It was meditation. Still fighting through Pinky Blinders. Wife and I started Mobland, Tom Hardy and Mobland, Pierce Brosnan. It's the talk of streaming. No spoilers. No spoilers. We're in episode 2 or 3. Everybody's talking about
Mobland on? What platform?
That's on Paramount Plus.
Okay.
Paramount Plus is Mobland. Well done. You got to fight through the first 2 episodes.
How's that cable bill?
We're going to get to that in a moment. We're going to wrap it up with that in a few minutes. Because I got a haircut appointment here. I got to get tight. Mm-hmm. The other thing is you watched the Pee-wee documentary.
Oh my God.
And I have that in my queue. It's queued up to watch it. I was never a Pee-wee guy, but I understand his greatness and his accomplishment and what he did. So you can't stop telling me about it. Tell me about Pee-wee.
Yeah, it was incredible. Remember, I was a big Letterman guy, and so I was, and a lot of comedians. Elmira, New York, like here's the second mention, but was a test market for something called cable TV when I was a little boy, and home box office before it got its gangster name HBO. So I saw Steve Martin before he was famous, and Pee Wee Herman before he was famous, and a lot of underground and avant-garde type of comedians. And David Letterman was cutting edge and almost performance art type of host. So they were a nice marriage, Letterman and Pee Wee had, and he had Pee Wee on. I think it was once every 8 weeks for a while. He would have him on because it was just
that much.
Yeah. I didn't know that until I saw this documentary. There's a lot you didn't know. And he's been a performer since he was a kid. He's from upstate New York originally, so he's got the same roots as me. And people from upstate New York have a fascination, especially my friends, my fellow friends, several of them. Billy, who ended up being a great musician in Barry Manilow's band, and I've known him since kindergarten. Aldo, my teammate in Pop Warner, who lived with Billy out here in L.A. and ran away with the circus just like Billy and played with Ozzy Osbourne's band. And my friend Dina in New York, a classmate who went there to be an off-Broadway actress, Tony and Tina's Wedding, the original cast. So a lot of us who ran away would have run away on the circus, went to Hollywood or New York. And that's what Pee Wee did. Grew up upstate New York, then Florida, Sarasota, Florida, where the Barnum and Bailey Circus would go during the winter to his hometown. So he grew up around circus people, and they would have little camps. And he was out there like Philippe Petit in a Speedo on a bar with fire when he was a kid going to these camps. And so he went to circus camp over the summer. And it's all this, and a lot of it because of when he grew up, his dad had film. And so it's a lot of stuff you didn't know about Paul Rubens because he embellished, he called himself Pee Wee Herman. He went on talk shows as Pee Wee Herman. He never went on as Paul. And so you got to see this guy sit down and talk about Paul, the guy who invented Pee Wee Herman. And it's a lot of guys from Saturday Night Live that you would have heard of that he wrote the shows with at the Groundlings and eventually his own show that he took out of the Groundlings. And it's really incredible what this funny kid from upstate New York and eventually Sarasota, Florida, was able to do with his life. And he was gay and, had to keep that, that was something in show business you could not talk about. So even either had secret relationships or none at all when he was doing the Pee Wee thing and at the top of his career. So there was that. He sat down in front of a camera, and the guy who was making the documentary didn't know the Pee Wee was going to die, but Pee Wee might have known. So you got to know this guy named Paul, who was Pee Wee Herman, that you had no idea anything about what he was like. And it's a really in the arrests and everything. He discussed everything. And it's really, because if the younger people don't know, you had to go out for your pornography back in the day. It wasn't just in your hand, no pun intended. And so he got caught at a porn shop doing what people do when they watch porn many times. So, and he walked us through that and how devastating that was. And it was all very honest up front, which he never was about his life before this documentary. And then he died while it was being finished up. And
how did he die? How did he die?
Cancer. He had cancer treatment for 6 years. And he was from the 50s where you didn't talk about stuff, whether it was sexuality or your health. You just didn't wear everything on your sleeve. That was kind of his generation. He didn't tell, only a couple of people closest to him knew what he was going through. And he did make a final tape the day before he died about some of the stuff. But that was, and the guy making the film did not know Pee Wee was going to die before it was finished. So it's fascinating. It was very, very good. Whether or not you're a Pee Wee fan, and there's a lot of documentaries that you and I have both seen of people that we weren't fans of that were incredible. Everyone's got a great story.
I watched that one on Robbie Williams, the singer, and in the UK, which was fabulous. And there were so many sides. You should go see that, which was really good. So I'm definitely going to check that out. I wanted to mention one thing. We don't like to end our podcast on death, but I wanted to bring up the passing of John Brenkus from Sports Science on ESPN. Okay. And this was really interesting, and I'll try to shorten it. I interviewed him a couple of times. He was really, really, really good friends with my son's boss, really good friends with our buddy Megamath, Scott Flansburgh.
Oh, wow.
The human calculator, a genius. He's been on Oprah, Howard Stern, Jay Leno. The human calculator,
a lot of
please.
He's
coming on. He's coming. He's booked. He's coming on the podcast.
Good. Oh, good.
He's one of the greats, one of my good friends, and he was really tight with them. So John Brenkus was suffering from depression, and lost his battle with depression.
Mm.
And my son happened to go down to Atlanta where his studio was. This guy won 6 Emmy Awards for sports science. He would do shows on ESPN on when the bat hit the ball and launched trajectory and, all the science behind it. It was a really good show. It wasn't dummy filler. It was really good sports and science.
Uh-huh.
And the guy was super successful. So my buddies told me about his production companies and his projects and multi-million-dollar deals. Well, he obviously took his life. He tried to do that before. And my buddy who just saw him was on his boat and at his mansion. And my son said, Dad, I was down there too. And I go, oh, I forgot. He goes, yeah, I brought Marcus Allen and Tim Brown there for a day of shooting in a studio. And he couldn't have been nicer to my son. I think he took his life at 53 years old and he's gone. And I wanted to say this, that if anybody has a problem in life, you got to talk and you got to let people know. This guy was beloved and was so successful and moved his production company into his new mansion in Atlanta. His mansion, just bought a boat where the speakers were worth $100,000 on the boat. You would think he had everything, but Tom, the darkness and the demons got to him, as our friend Jay Glazer would say, the gray got to him.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention John Brankus, who I spoke to and interviewed a couple of times in my career and was a really good guy, and we're going to miss him.
And so we so often associate success and wealth with happiness. And with Anthony Bourdain had the coolest job we thought in the world. Or at least I did, because I worked in the restaurant business and I love broadcasting and good television and people. And I would go to Libya and not everyone would. And Anthony Bourdain would go to Libya and walk around the rubble and talk to people and have, and eat. And we thought he had everything. And same thing here. And one thing you and I have gone back and forth about, and that is there is nothing wrong about talking about death or ending the show with it, because it's going to happen to me. It's going to happen to you. And an important thing to remember for all of us, that it is going to happen to all of us. So we have to remember to put things in perspective and not sweat small stuff. And it's all small stuff. When it comes to our health, we know when we're sick, when we're healthy, we have 10 problems. When we're sick, we have 1. So just always remember perspective. There's nothing wrong with talking about death. It's something that brings us all together because we all have it in common.
Yeah, it's a pretty serious topic overall. I'm going to see you. I'm coming. I'm flying out Friday with my wife. We're going to a wedding in Beverly Hills. And it's actually in Beverly Hills.
90210.
And we're staying at a swanky Beverly Hills hotel.
Where exactly are you staying?
I changed my name like Tommy Lee. You know what Tommy Lee's name was when he checked into hotels for Motley Crue?
No.
Peter Goes In Ya. But that's Peter Goes In Ya. Peter Goes In Ya. So you will not be able to find what hotel I'm at. You will not. Okay. But we'll be poolside Friday. We're trying to go to Dan Tana's on Friday night. So that could be something pretty cool. My wife's never been there. I've been there.
She hasn't. Oh, great.
Yeah, we'll try to find some fun in either Hollywood or Beverly Hills. And my buddy's getting married on Saturday. It's a black tie wedding. Nice. So we'll have the black tie. And then we'll fly back on Sunday for Raiders Media Day on Monday, where I have one of my longest days of the year every year, from 8 to Mad Dog ends at 11 o'clock at night. That's a marathon. But that's so hopefully we'll be able to see you. I know you're doing the news and your big jobs and everything you're doing, but maybe I'll text you. I will text you, and maybe you can shoot over to Beverly Hills for a cocktail. Because I always dreamed of like the old movie star days in the 50s and 40s and 60s where you'd meet in the lobby of a Beverly Hills hotel. Yes. You'd have a cocktail at the Polo Lounge or something. You'd look over, there'd be Greta Garbo. There'd be, I'd like to show my wife a little bit of that.
JT, look, there's Joan Crawford over there.
Yeah. So are you free around this weekend, or you got a busy weekend? Are you in town, which is the most important
Yes,
thing?
I am. I won't be out of town until I got 2 more weeks. I have to go to my niece's graduating second in her class, second smartest person I know. And so I will be around, and I'll talk to you about that. What is a lot of fun about LA is you do see people. When you grow up in certain parts, you grow up in certain parts of the world. Long Island, you saw people that painted houses like Jerry Seinfeld's father. And in Los Angeles, you see movie stars. So maybe you will see a movie star at the bar. Or we will.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Everybody in my chat is complimenting your shirt. What is that shirt?
This is my graduation to big boy music. ZZ Top, Fandango.
Wow.
Remember, if you go back in the Hot Tub Time Machine, there was always that question: if you could take 3 albums, back when we had albums, to a desert island, what 3 would you take? And that was always on the top of my list. One side was live, the other side was studio work, and it is one of the greatest albums ever made.
Thanks for listening and watching. Please share, like. And I told people, I think I have like 12,000 followers on my JT the Brick Facebook page. And I think like 11,000 must be bots, because I ask everybody, if you're following us or you known us and how long we've been together, the only way this is going to work and we're going to be able to continue to do it is you got to subscribe for free. You got to like it. And that's it. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to pay a subscription. Just subscribe for free, hit the like button, and then tell your friends about it.